Hey everybody, welcome to the next reading of Eden. I'm happy to report that I was hard at work last week on the edits to the Eden follow-up and everything continues to be on track. And I'm pretty psyched about that project and how things are going there. So I am really looking forward to a time when I can share that with you. But tonight we're going to be doing some more reading from the original. If you recall, Dr. Green has just arrived on Lola Station, the research outpost that is studying Eden, and he just received a little ping from Rosalind, who is eager to see him, and that's where we shall begin. "It's so good to see you, Malcolm," Rosalind said directly into my ear, her voice warm and quiet. I held her close and knew that proximity betrayed my instant arousal at her touch. Being in cold sleep for 3 weeks meant my hormones brimmed unreleased. Certainly, that wasn't helping. I think under any circumstance, seeing Rosalind again after so many years would have had my heart racing just as fast. She stepped back and held me out at arm's length, her thin lips turned up into a grin that reached her eyes. She pushed a stray lock of my hair behind my ear in a gesture so natural that it made me realize how on edge and awkward I felt. "So good, Malcolm." "I need to check in." My voice came a little too quick and I took a deep breath. "But I had to come see you right away. The sight of Eden overwhelmed me. I needed an anchor. I needed to feel you again." I regretted being so forthcoming as much as I regretted my word choice. The effects of cold sleep and the long flight were making me dramatic. It was an emotional state that was best slept off, chemical assistance optional. "You don't need to explain, Malcolm," she said. "Who did I call within my first 15 minutes on Lola? In the middle of the night? You don't need to explain." She rubbed my arms and then pulled me in for another embrace. Her lips brushed against my cheek before she spoke again. "Go and check in. I'm going back to bed. I don't know if you're tired or not, but if you want to join me," she said. "My rack sleeps too, or so they claim." "Okay," I said. She kissed me again, this time on the corner of the mouth. It was a small kiss that, despite my best intentions, blossomed into open mouths and hard breathing. I pulled away from her. "I'll come back soon." "Just come in. The code for my door is 2321. Wow, trusting. On a small station like Lola, trust is a requirement. She smiled, placed a hand on my hip, and leaned toward me. "So if anyone messes with my stuff, I'll know it was you." "Great, thanks," I said, and she gently pushed me back out into the hall. 2321, hurry." The door slid shut, and I walked back to my apartment, mostly sure I would be sleeping in my own bed that night. I sat down at the small desk and placed my terminal on the shiny plastic surface. I logged onto the station's network, called up my personal communications link, and in several seconds, Katya's heart-shaped face filled the screen. Our daughter Gwen was seated on her lap, clearly fascinated with something off the camera's field of view. Her chubby hands kept reaching off-screen. The very sight of them made my heart ache. "Hi, Malcolm," my wife grinned, albeit sadly. There was a bark in the background. Frisco, our 12-year-old Cocker Spaniel, was eager to get in on the conversation. "Safe and sound arrival?" "Yeah," I replied, "but I'm more than a few hours off the day cycle here. I hope it doesn't screw up my sleep." "Oh, you'll be fine," Katya said. The baby was giggling now. "Say hi to Daddy, Gwen." Her giggle was enough to make me feel a stab of guilt for the brief encounter with Rosalind, but it also strengthened my resolve to stay in my quarters. I wonder how Katya would feel if she knew that Rosalind, who had been friends with us both back at the university, had made a play to steal her husband, unintentional as it may have been. "Hey, Peanut," I said. "It's Daddy." Sweet and round-faced, Gwen continued to giggle, and it broke my heart to look at her. Love for a child is like no other, and it said that in their eyes you see your reflection. At that moment, I wasn't too pleased with mine. We miss you, Daddy, Katya said. I miss you guys, too. It was true, I missed them both. We have to go, Malcolm. I've got a bottle heating. Call later if you can. I will, if I can. I love you guys, I said. I love you too. Say hello to Rosalind for me. I cut the transmission and closed the cover of the terminal. Eyes shut, I lay down on the small bed. Sleep was far off, but it was nowhere as distant as home. The readings are all accurate, Rosalind told me, over a cup of coffee and a stack of fanfold printouts. I had slept the entire day of my arrival, through the evening and into the next morning. Caffeine was my only hope of reining it in and focusing on the debrief. None of Lola or Eden seemed real. Eden has a shallow atmosphere and maintains a constant temperature of 15 degrees Celsius. We've been unable to determine the depth of what we're now calling the climatic zone. We still can't figure out how she does it. I shook my head, disbelieving. This information hadn't made it into any of the reports that had crossed my desk. My mind reeled at the possibilities, trying to come up with any combination of far-fetched ideas to explain the phenomenon. Do you believe in magic? The tug of scientific discovery was narcotic, and it made me miss my days as a researcher when the bottom line had been science instead of dollar signs and zeros. A draft cut through me, and I wrapped my fingers around my mug, shivering. It's cold here on Lola, Rosalind said, her tone apologetic. The design of these instant stations is shoddy, half-assed at best, and it's hard to maintain a constant temperature. Sometimes I'm afraid the whole thing is going to come apart. My brows stitched together, and she reached out and grabbed my hand for a squeeze. The station isn't going to come apart, Malcolm. I smiled an uneasy grin and glanced around the dark lab space. We sat at an underlit white table with the documents spread out around us. I glanced into the shadows and then closed my eyes for a minute, attempting to shrug off my sudden disquiet. In the darkness behind my closed lids, Eden's branches spread out across my imagination. So, what do you think? Will the company like what they see enough to cut me a check? She asked. Certainly. It'll be hard for me to paint things in anything other than a spectacular light. There's a lot of work to be done, though. I opened my eyes. So, that alarm. I justified the shift in conversation with my role on Lola, at least to myself. Rosalind's hand slipped from mine. The alarm? She replied. Yeah. When I called in last night, before my arrival, you were cut short by some kind of alarm. What was that all about? Oh. She shuffled the papers toward her and busied her hands, organizing the printouts into several hasty piles. Rosalind, I pushed her. Suit malfunction, she said. One of our junior scientists was out on Eden and his glove came loose somehow. His suit depressurized up to the shoulder before the fail-safes engaged. Jesus. I tried not to imagine the poor bastard's hand, swelling in seconds as gases in his veins and capillaries boiled off. Though I understood the science of depressurization too well, I still imagined the soft tissues shredding apart, sending crystalline blood into the vacuum. We had to take the hand, Malcolm. How goddamn archaic is that? Rosalind shook her head. The whole hand? I thought the fail-safes were supposed to protect from things like that. The fail-safe was part of the problem. It didn't engage right away, and he lost the glove. That, and it took us almost 10 minutes to reach him. By then it was too late. Pretty grim, I admitted. I pictured myself in the same situation, and thought about how long 10 minutes would feel. Is he going to be okay? I don't know. He's in shock. We haven't been able to get a rational word out of him. His vitals are all stable, but that's about it. His mind is gone. He spends a lot of time rambling on about nonsense. Well, I imagine that being partially depressurized while standing atop a giant space tree can have some lasting effects. I wasn't joking. I was terrified. And I imagine you checked his suit for the cause of the malfunction. We're still looking into it. And the rest of the suits on Lola? Stop digging, I told myself, even though I was on Lola to dig. We're checking them. Look, this is all rather besides the point. Do you? Well, if I'm going to be going out on this thing and my suit is going to fall apart, I'd like to know that ahead of time. That, and I have to report every accident to the company. Do you want to see Eden, Malcolm? She asked suddenly. When her eyes fixed on mine, her gaze was even. I didn't look away, and my heart skipped a beat, a familiar response to eye contact with Rosalind that I hadn't felt in years. It hurt, just a little bit. Okay, I said quietly. She was trying to distract me. Even knowing that, it still worked. Show me Eden. And we'll end there tonight. I don't know if you noticed I got distracted a few times. There's a giant moth flying around in here. Well, at least I think it's a real moth and not a phantom. So, thanks for tuning in. Stick around. More Eden readings to come. Perhaps in the not-so-distant future, I'll be sharing some excerpts from the Eden sequel. And there's more good stuff coming up this week. So stay tuned, folks, and thanks for joining. This has been Phil Rossi with a reading from Eden. Cheers.